time to take a look at what's grabbing headlines around the world. Barack Obama is finishing up his final world tour as U.S. president. Yesterday, he met with German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Berlin, as I mentioned.
That's right. And you can see a photo of Angela Merkel waiting for Barack Obama for him to arrive. That's on the front page of the Wall Street Journal today, which is focusing on the context in which that meeting took place. If you take a look at the front page, you can see they're talking about a populist tide that's hitting Angela Merkel because, boosted by Brexit and the recent election of Donald Trump, her foes are gaining confidence and they're gaining power. Now, Merkel still has some loyal allies, including Barack Obama. And this is an article in Le Figaro that takes a look at their close friendship that they've really managed to establish over the past couple of years. In fact, yesterday, he said that if he were German and could vote in Germany, he would vote for her. So that's quite a vote of confidence for her. You can see here, Le Figaro says that Obama sees Merkel as the guardian of Western values. I guess you could say she's kind of the last hope for Obama in Europe. And so it's no surprise that he chose Germany as the last leg of his farewell tour in Europe.
And while he was there, he gave an exclusive interview to the magazine Der Spiegel in which he praised.
That's right. Lots of words of praise for Angela Merkel in that interview with Der Spiegel. It's quite a lengthy interview, covers a lot of ground. For instance, he warned about the dangers of underestimating the impact of globalization. You can see that headline there. If the global economy is unresponsive to people who feel left behind, then we could end up seeing more and more of these divisions arise throughout advanced economies around the world. That's a quote from that interview.
That's a thinly veiled, obviously, reference to the events back in the States with the election of Donald Trump. Papers across the world are continuing to react with surprise to Trump's election and the consequences that that could bring.
That's right. It could change a lot of things on several agendas. Particularly, there's a lot of focus on the environment right now, of course, because of the COP22 international summit that's taking place in Marrakesh. There's an interesting cartoon here in Courrier International. This is by the Canadian cartoonist Bado, where you can see that there are a lot of fears that Donald Trump, he's being called the climate skeptic in chief. There are fears that he could come back on that climate agreement that was reached in Paris last year, the COP21. So you can see this very stark contrast between Barack Obama, good cop, and Donald Trump, bad cop. Little play on words.
Yeah, what a great pun. All right, well, meanwhile, Trump is busy setting up his transition team. And yesterday he met, as we talked about earlier, with the Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe.
That's right. As you can imagine, that meeting is getting a lot of attention in the Japanese press. Remember, as a candidate, Donald Trump said some pretty scary things for Japan, statements that really rattled Tokyo, according to this article in the Japan Times. For instance, he said he wanted to make allies pay more for help from U.S. forces. Now you can see this article talking about that strategic alliance that exists between Japan and the U.S. The U.S. is really at the core of Japan's diplomacy and security, and so it really needs to have a good relationship with Washington. Now, we've reported this morning that Shinzo Abe must have heard some very reassuring things from Donald Trump because he said that he was confident that Donald Trump was a trustworthy leader.
Yes, well, that must have been an interesting meeting. So as a candidate, Trump vowed to ban Muslims from entering the country and floated the idea of a national registry for Muslim immigrants. U.S. papers are outraged over Trump's advisors are exploring a way to establish that.
That's right. It's quite a shocking proposal from Donald Trump. Let's take a look at the editorial in the New York Times today. Is it 1942 all over again? Now, why are they talking about 1942? Well, it's because Trump supporters say there is a legal precedent for this kind of a registry. Even though legal experts say it would be completely unconstitutional, they say, this has happened before in the U.S., and what they're referring to is something called Order 9066. That was issued by President Franklin Roosevelt in February 1942, following, of course, the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. Now, this led to the imprisonment of more than 111,000 Americans of Japanese descent. Now, the New York Times says this was clearly one of the darkest chapters in American history, and so it's insane to think that Donald Trump supporters are actually quoting it as a legal precedent. Now, it's hard to transition from such a story into a lighter story on Donald Trump, but I must admit some people are trying to seek a little relief in the wake of his election. There's not a cartoon, it's actually an article in the Daily Beast today reporting on something I thought was a little silly. They're wondering, can Donald Trump's hair survive Inauguration Day. It's known that it's really windy up there on Capitol Hill, and so they're exploring his advisors who are trying to figure out how to make his mop stay on his head.
To be seen. All right, totally changing subjects. Let's end with a big story that's in the British newspapers. A 14-year-old girl who died of cancer has won the right to be cryogenically frozen.
That's right. This is a really interesting story. Top news in the UK. Take a look, first of all, at the Daily Mirror. You can see dead girl, 14 frozen, so she can live again, because the hope is that she could be reanimated by medical advances in the future. Now, the British papers are calling her Frozen Girl. This is a historic and controversial legal ruling, according to the newspaper I. Now, she's only being referred to as JS, and she apparently sent this court a letter where she explains her decision. She says, "I'm only 14 years old, and I don't want to die, but I know I'm going to. I think being cryopreserved gives me a chance to be cured and woken up even in 100 years' time." This is an interesting article in The Guardian saying that it is actually possible.
All right, thank you, Florence Villemino, for the press roundup.